Kia ora, good evening Rotorua. Just ahead in your Tuesday night bulletin. Rotorua District Council Chief Executive Peter Gurin proposes a rates increase of 3.2% in his second draft of the annual budget. Zonta hosts this year's International Women's Day breakfast. And the Magic take on the Tactics in the third round of Netball's ANZ Championships. Those stories up next on City News. Rotorua District Council's Corporate and Customer Services Committee met again today to finalise the Council's annual budget. Chief Executive Peter Gurin has had to redo the annual budget to meet repayments on the interest on the airport debt. It was proposed that ratepayers meet the shortfall. Mr Gurin told City News about this year's proposed rates increase.
2 years ago, a rate increase of 1.9% against a backdrop of inflation around just under 3%. Last year, a rate increase of 1% against a backdrop of CPI of about just over 2%. And this year, our first draft budgets that we presented to Council included a rate increase of 3.5%. And that's against inflation as at December, or CPI as at December of 4%. And my take on what inflation is likely to be for the next 12 months, and that will be what affects our costs, is somewhere around 5%. We've done a second draft of the budgets, and that's a rate increase of 3.2%. Now, it's really important to remember that that's our total rates revenue required, so it's not what affects each individual property. So they will vary from between 2.5% and 4%, 5% maybe in some isolated instances.
An announcement on the decision reached at today's meeting will be made tomorrow, and we have more from Peter Gurin later in the show. Rotorua District Council and police are working together to ensure our smallest residents are strapped into their car seats safely. Local police are staging checkpoints in Rotorua throughout the month to check that restraints are being worn and that car seats are correctly installed and fitted to children. Council Road Safety Coordinator Jodie Lawson says a previous checkpoint drive revealed that only half of caregivers and parents had correctly restrained their children in cars. She says the overall compliance was just 53% and that many parents thought that they were getting it right. So they were shocked to find that their car seats weren't actually correctly installed or fitted. Ms Lawson says, however, that most people rectified problems immediately. She says tether straps and bolts were the most common fault, adding that seats with tether straps need to be securely bolted to the steel frame of the car for the car seat to work correctly. The council and police are also offering presentations to local kindergartens and early childcare centres for children and parents. For more information, contact Rotorua District Council Road Safety Coordinator Jodie Lawson on 027 454 5713. The Zonta Club of Rotorua hosted this year's International Women's Day breakfast at the Blue Baths. Over 80 women attended the event with June Grant, the keynote speaker. The breakfast also celebrated 100 years since the first event in 1911. The Bay of Plenty Regional Council announced algae levels at Okawa Bay on Lake Rotoiti have been reduced following treatment which prevented potentially toxic blue-green algae from blooming on the lake. Tests this week showed algae levels were well below the threshold where effects occur. Regional Council Lakes Operation Manager Andy Brewer says the treatment, a modified zeolite product called Aquil P, was applied to the lake in 2007 and 2009. He says it was designed to prevent a bloom from occurring, which after this week's tests seems to have worked. In sport tonight, the Waikato Bay of Plenty Magic prevailed over an emotional Canterbury Tactics last night in an overtime thriller at the event centre. The sides could not be separated in regulation time, locked at 47 all at the end of 4 quarters. However, the Magic outmuscled the less fancy Tactics in 2 overtime periods to blow the score out to 63-56 and preserve their unbeaten record at the top of the standings with the Queensland Firebirds. The Tactics, in their first game since Christchurch's deadly earthquake, came out firing, taking a 15-13 lead after the first quarter. But the Magic fought back in the second, tying things up at 26 all at half-time. The match was a home game for the Tactics after their home ground, the CBS Arena in Christchurch, was left unstable following the earthquake. Into weather now for Rotorua and the surrounding area. Tonight, fine southerly breezes, overnight a low of 8. Tomorrow, Wednesday, fine light winds, a high of 21, a low of 9. Long range for Thursday, more fine weather with light winds, a high of 21 and a low of 10. The marine forecast for Lake Rotorua for Wednesday, southeast 10 knots, waves below half a metre and fine. Still to come tonight, Nadia Christensen talks with us about real estate. Rotorua District Council Chief Executive Peter Gurin tells us about the annual budget, and 2 graduates from Rotorua's School for Young Parents tell us about their education experiences. That's coming up after the break on City News.